Many people who know me well, or have just had a passing familiarity with me from these videos, would know that I'm basically a bishop in the Church of Brandon Sanderson. Today, you're all going to watch me commit heresy. Hello everyone, welcome to the Book Cafe. If you're new here, consider subscribing, and if you're a veteran, welcome back. I tend to make it a point not to review too many books by the same author, because generally I feel like if I can recommend one of them, I can recommend all of them. But today we're dealing with a special case. For long-time viewers, you'll know that I already reviewed Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn, which is one of my favorite books, and also did an entire video based on my interpretation of Sanderson's 3 Laws of Magic. Recently, however, Sanderson published a book called Legion, The Many Lives of Stephen Leeds, and I felt it necessary to review this one, for reasons that will soon become apparent. Brandon Sanderson is one of the best fantasy writers currently living. He knows the genre, he knows storytelling, he knows his characters, which is why it's so weird that when he tries to branch out into sci-fi, it's absolutely terrible. I've read a lot of his forays into science fiction. Perfect State, Firstborn, most of the Legion books, and it's not the novella structure that does it. One of my favorite books ever is The Emperor's Soul, which is one of his novellas, which, if you haven't read, you should absolutely do so. It's life-changing. Something about the science fiction genre seems to make him forget all of his own rules. So let's talk about Legion. The main character of Legion is a man named Stephen Leeds, who is technically the smartest man in the world. The technically is because of a unique mental disorder where he actually personally has no access to any of the skills and knowledge he learns. Instead, whenever he studies a particular subject, his mind creates an entirely new personality that is an expert on said subject. Stephen is then able to interact with these aspects as if they were real people separate from him, as long as he pretends that that is the case, which he is aware is completely ridiculous, but it works. As a result, he has access to hundreds of different fields of specialized knowledge, and in fact has entire aspects simply from muscle memory. This is a fascinating concept. It could be difficult to do a lot with, but it's worth exploring. The problem is that Sanderson proceeds to then not do that. The first 2/3 of this novella collection, Legion and Legion Skin Deep, have very little, if at all, to do with Leeds' psychopathology, which is an absolutely wasted opportunity. Here's where it gets worse. Sanderson's second law of magic is depth before breadth. Explore the consequences of a single change or magical ability before creating an additional one. This was his idea on how to make fantasy better. He formulated it. He was the one who first stated it, and yet in Legion he seems to have completely forgotten it exists. The first novella, Legion, centers around tracking down a stolen camera that is capable of taking pictures of any moment in the past, which is obviously a world-changing discovery for all manner of reasons. And yet it is promptly abandoned in the second novella, where Leeds has to track down the corpse of a scientist who encoded all of his notes into his junk DNA. Interesting concepts on their own, but Sanderson is playing with 3 different worlds here that have no relation to each other. As a result, the setting is schizophrenic. The stories are so jammed full of film noir tropes that, contrary to Sanderson's usually satisfying unpredictability, the reader is left unsurprised and unsatisfied. The aspects themselves present an additional problem, in that in order to actually stick with the theme, Sanderson has to introduce so many characters that the book becomes overloaded, and 2/3 of these characters aren't technically real. There's very little in the way of character development. The setting is barely existent. You can't really tell what the point of writing this one was. It's like if you went to a 5-star restaurant and they served you McDonald's hamburger. Now don't get me wrong, the writing itself is impeccable. Sanderson's style always shines through, and it does really work, but I've seen it do better work. So in sort of summary, the writing's great, the plot is like if someone pressed shuffle on the entirety of iTunes, There's too many characters, and it's all kinda eh. There's so much going on that you kind of forget to care about any of it. I'd rank Legion at borrow it, which is a damn shame. Now, I would like to point out that this does not mean that Sanderson is a bad writer. Sanderson's fantasy is some of the best I've ever read, and I'm only aware of Legion because I made it a point some years back to read literally everything he's ever written, including several unpublished novels. So, Sanderson's great, just don't pick up his sci-fi. Do you disagree with me? Did you like Legion? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, remember to show it by clicking the like button. Click on the dragon to subscribe and here for more videos like this. I'll be seeing everybody next week with another review. So until then, read good fantasy.